Today's video is on Exodus chapter 36. And again, we looked at these verses earlier on, but I thought that verses 1 and 2 were very significant. So we'll read them. So Bezalel, Aholiab, and every skilled person to whom the Lord had given skill and ability to know how to carry out all the work of constructing the sanctuary or tabernacle, are to do the work just as the Lord commanded. Then Moses summoned Bezalel and Aholiab and every skilled person to whom the Lord had given ability and who was willing to come and do the work. The focus of these verses is on the two men, Bezalel and Aholiab, and those that were called to do the work. We see this is important in the construction of the tabernacle. We've mentioned several times that Moses himself could not have done the work needed to require the tabernacle. It was very much a joint effort. Exodus chapter 36 is the blueprint for the completion of the tabernacle. This passage shows us how God moves a community from vision to reality, and that God's work is achieved through a combination of divine capacity, that is, God gave skill and gifts to Aholiab and Bezalel and to the other people who worked on the construction of the tabernacle, and human cooperation. So divine capacity and human cooperation. Exodus chapter 36 verse 1, the verse we read, tells us that God put wisdom and understanding into Bezalel and Aholiab. These weren't just natural talents, they were spiritual deposits. The word wisdom, Hebrew word, chokmah, in the Hebrew mind, wisdom isn't just knowing things, it's technical skill and, in this case, craftsmanship. Proverbs chapter 1 verse 7 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of this wisdom." The lesson here is that whether you're an accountant, teacher, or carpenter, your professional skill is a gift from God. God gives us natural talents, and He gives us, if you're a Christian, a spiritual gift. But the point here is that God is the one who put that talent or spiritual gift there. Then there's another word that's used in verse 1, that is understanding. This refers to discernment, the ability to look at raw materials and see the finished product. Proverbs 24 verse 3 says, "By wisdom a house is built, and through understanding it is established." Wisdom starts the work, but understanding ensures it's established according to the right pattern. Notice we read in verse 1 that it was done according to all that the Lord had commanded. Here we see divine consistency. We see our gifts are not for our own self-expression, they are for God's purposes. Here we see that the craftsmen were obedient to what God had revealed to them. 1 Corinthians chapter 3 verse 10, Paul calls himself a wise master builder because he built specifically on the foundation of Christ, and he mentions that in chapter 3. We don't invent the mission, we follow the master's blueprint. And the second thing we saw, or the third thing we see in verse 2, is that the passage moves from the head, wisdom and understanding, to the heart. Moses called everyone whose heart stirred him to come. This word stirred means to lift up. Their hearts were lifted out of their own selfish ambitions and elevated towards the glory of God. We can have skill and gift, but lack the willingness. God provides the capacity, but we must provide the willingness. Talent is the engine, but a stirred heart is the fuel that makes it happen. 2 Corinthians chapter 9 verse 7 reminds us that God loves a cheerful giver. Someone who gives cheerfully is someone whose heart is stirred rather than forced. And God would rather work with willing hearts. Then we see that they came to draw near. The text says they came to do the work. In Hebrew, the expression for coming near It's the same word used for a priest approaching the altar. For the Christian, there is no secular work. When you use your God-given skill for His kingdom, your work or everything actually becomes an act of worship. You are drawing near to God through your service. Ephesians chapter 2 verse 10 says, we are His workmanship or handiwork, created for good works that He has prepared in advance. And so, conclusion could be something like this: God has put something in you, whether that be natural talent or spiritual gift if we're Christians. Now the question is, will you allow your heart to be stirred to use it? In verse 2, when our skill meets His Spirit, the sanctuary is built. And so let's remember we can learn from the posture of the heart and the head. Divine capacity, God gave them the gift, but human cooperation. They had to be willing and the heart had to be stirred. Thank you for watching.